And I will give you the 3, 2, 1, we're off and running.
All right, great. Thank you very much. We have not just done research on sustainable packaging. We've also recently, and you go to our website and download this report on sustainable packaging. It's extensive. And we've done one just recently, just for Christmas, on the circular economy, which kind of got dovetails, and we're going to pick up some of those statistics and insights on the circular economy because it's an emerging trend happening in the marketplace. So let's get right into it. I think what's important to understand is that there is a growing demand and need by consumers. This was a PwC study to avoid the use of plastics. And you could say that this is kind of, I'll call it an emerging trend, because our research will show you that although consumers are cognizant and willing to, to avoid plastic, the reality is they're not willing to trade the convenience that plastic provides. And so we're at this crux, and there's a need for leadership that we're going to talk about to lead these consumers and show a way that they can live with fewer plastic products, bags, etc. What we found interesting, and I'm going to go deeper into this. Again, this was a separate study, and it kind of dovetails into the sustainable packaging study that we did. Is that consumers are looking for leadership from retailers, and they're willing to reward those retailers with becoming their primary place to shop if they see a commitment to sustainability and to kind of a move away from plastics. And so there's value here. When you think of the Canadian marketplace, you think of the kind of competitive set that we have here in Canada, where we have fewer banners compared to the US. One, market share is significant, and so customer loyalty is a really important factor for retailers looking at growth. Looking at different initiatives on sustainable packaging decisions, you can see here it's just not one thing. It's a whole variety of elements, and we've been involved in helping brand and market companies that help accelerate, biodegradable plastics. We've been involved with a company on helping to track the date and age and temperature of products and make sure that when they arrive to the retailer, they still have a strong shelf life, because we know that food waste is another major issue in the marketplace. But you can see within this map, the obvious point is that it's not one solution. It's not a silver bullet. We're not going to solve the replacement of plastic and the growth of sustainability by doing just one thing. It's actually a combination of a variety of elements, and those elements will vary depending on the mindset of the consumer in the marketplace. So our study was 1,000 grocery shoppers. So you can see here what the split is. Do most of their shopping, do all their grocery shopping, represented the significant part of the equation, and we still had a group that share equally in grocery shopping. I would fit into the do all the grocery shopping. I enjoy shopping, so I do all the grocery shopping in my house. And I have a question to the retailers. So the question here is, I'm very sustainable oriented, very concerned about the use of plastic. Why are we not making the plastic we put all our fruits and vegetables, the ones that you tear off the roll, why wouldn't we make those biodegradable? They end up in a green bag, right, with our, all the cut vegetables. Why wouldn't we make that biodegradable? And why wouldn't the manufacturers of those green bags make their bags biodegradable? That's just a simple thing that may eliminate some of the mindset. I'm picking those bags. A lot of it, I will put the raw vegetables right in my basket without the plastic bag for that specific reason of reducing plastic. So just food for thought. We'll park that one for now, and we can talk about that at the end. So the questions we asked is, what consumer segment is the most predisposed to purchasing sustainable? The reality is not everyone is committed to sustainability. And so trying to talk to everyone and trying to convince everyone is not going to achieve the goal of moving people off plastic. We call them early adopters. These are consumers who are setting the trend. then we have late adopters, and then we have the followers, and then you'll always have resistors who will never convert, don't see the issue. What materials are perceived as sustainable and which are not? That was surprising to us. I'm sure it'll be surprising to you when we show you the stats. What other forms of sustainable practices can reduce reliance on plastics? We're going to talk about, the ecosystem required. It's, as I mentioned, it's not a silver bullet that we have to force plastic manufacturers eliminating plastic. It's an entire process we need to look at, because we need to wean the consumers off plastic. They're very happy with the current state, even though the media makes it sound like there's major issues. Yes, there are, but it's not driven by consumers, and we'll talk about that. What is the role of the retail in reducing reliance on plastic? And we'll share a little glimpse of the Store of the Future that we did. You can again download the entire full report, both sustainability and the Supermarket of the Future on our website. All right. So what is the future of sustainable packaging? Well, I would say it's probably shrinking daily, although I am sure that if there's some statistics out there that would show that there's actually more plastic being produced today than there was a year ago. It's the same argument for money. People say, with digital wallet, money's going to disappear. The reality, we're printing more money today than we did a year ago. So I think you could see that it's going to take a lot more to make that shift away from towards sustainable packaging, away from plastic. So here's the crux. Consumers really don't care. It is not a driver in their purchase decision. I pay attention to, we ask the question, which of these statements best describes you when making a purchase decision? I pay attention to recycling claims, but does not impact my purchase, 40%. Now there's a group, right? I only purchase products where the packaging can be recycled, is 8%. Then you can say, that in a way it's great news. It's an issue. We have a bit of time to fix this issue. But we've seen in adoption, we've seen in, the shift in consumer behavior with the pandemic, that all it takes is one trigger to turn that 8% to 40%, right? It doesn't take much to make that shift. And so what's important for you on this call and for the plastic industry to understand that you better be prepared. You need to have a plan and a path to the future that's going to enable you to accelerate these in the event that these consumers who only buy products where the packaging can be recycled becomes a significantly large percentage of the population. Obviously, when we look at sustainable packaging, primary issue is elimination excess packaging and plastics. It's not just plastics, it's excessive packaging. So when you look at, secondary boxes, a box within a box within a box, these are all things that we need to look at as part of the value chain and how we bring products to market. So we asked the question, on sustainable response, rank too much packaging as the most important factor to overcome. Yeah, elimination of plastic. In our study, you'll see the rankings. Yes, elimination of plastic is important, but too much packaging is actually a bigger issue. And you could say, well, that's interesting. We thought it was plastic. It's actually an opportunity for retailers and manufacturers, because packaging is a significant cost of doing business. And if we can reduce packaging, guess what? You're reducing the cost of your products. I know Walmart would be happy with that. They like squeezing their vendors and getting the best price for the consumers. So obviously here, reducing packaging has value for the consumer, but also value for the manufacturer and the retailer. And about 5 years ago, or actually 6 years ago, we were hired to do a study on the plastic industry and to come up with new codes. As you know, there are different icons that talk about the recyclability of plastic, which actually for consumers was very confusing. Some plastics are not recyclable, some are, depending on the region, even some that aren't are. But you know what? In our study, the confusion of recycling material was at the lowest. And I think the mindset there would be, the assumption we would make is that the blue box is kind of in the mind of the consumer. Once I put in the blue box, the government, the municipality, they figured it out. I don't need to sweat about these details, although it is an issue. This is something of interest. When you look at, we asked the question, what substrate is most environmentally friendly and easiest to recycle? Paper ranks really high, cardboard even higher. And I would say cardboard was a little bit surprising, but again, we're talking about packaging. So a lot of the products are shipped, not in paper, but cardboard. We also think about, the shift towards delivery to the home. Guess what gets delivered? I got an email from my wife this morning that my books got delivered, and it comes in a cardboard box. And so you could see here that they see that it's most environmentally friendly, ease of recycling. I would also say that the cardboard industry have pioneered recycling, right? The use of post-production board, the symbols on their packaging talks about, how the product was made and the fact that it's recycling. So they've got a head start. But what I found surprising here, and I'm hoping you pick up on the same thing we did, is look at metal and glass. I would have expected metal to be at the top of the list. It's the most recycled product, right? Yeah, 23% said it's most environmentally friendly compared to cardboard, that's 48%. And ease of recycling was actually lower, right? And then you look at glass, there's this whole suggestion in the marketplace, listen, let's move from plastic to glass. And look at this, glass, most environmentally friendly? Yeah, 18%, but ease of recycling, 24%. And one of the factors you could assume within glass is that consumers are now making the equation of, it's not just the glass, it's the cost of shipping, it's the carbon footprint that it costs to deliver glass products to the marketplace. So consumers are not that, silly. They're very attuned to the whole ecosystem of sustainability and the impact on the carbon footprint. So what is the driver of sustainable packaging? What's driving that? Well, we believe that the big movement has to happen in store. That retailers play a pivotal, critical role in driving sustainability. If you think of, what does a retailer provide? They provide the plastics that you put your produce in. They provide the bags that those products go into that you can take to your car. The packaging itself on shelf is, made of multiple substrates depending on the category. So there's a place the retailer can play, a pivotal place. And then when you look at reusable grocery bags, it's interesting. I go to the supermarket. I hope you do too. I'm just going to pull up my stats here and my sheets. The interesting point is we're seeing more and more consumers using recycled bags to take their groceries. I know I do. 64% bring their own bags. But the interesting point in the study was 41% who want retailers to provide bags instead. So I know there's a big move. I think Sobeys and Metro have stopped providing plastic bags. There's an opportunity here to transition those customers away from plastic towards paper. It's a bigger cost, I understand. But again, it's all about sustainability. It's also about market share and driving loyalty. And why the retail is so important is that 72% Canadian consumers prefer the store. Yes, online is growing, although it declined post-COVID to 13%. Yes, Voila and a variety of other platforms are making it more convenient for you to get your products to the home. But consumers still prefer to go to the store. And more importantly, if you're a retailer or a CPG brand, you want them to go to the store because that's where you can shift their consumer behavior to buy a product they may not have considered. It's where the retailer can create an experience that engages with their audience and build brand loyalty. It's where their staff can engage with their customers and provide a higher level of customer service. We know that's really important. So retail is not dead in the supermarket, and it remains a huge opportunity when it comes to sustainability. So we did a study on the recycling and also the green economy. And what we found out and what was part of the future packaging is probing on bulk. We wanted to see, is bulk an opportunity to have consumers shift their behavior. And ironically, if we look at the average supermarket, bulk has actually been shrinking because of the operational cost and some of the challenges. But 58% said the biggest barrier to refill services was no nearby location. So convenience is important for customers. 65% consumers said they would try refill service within a convenient location. And 39% of consumers said they had a higher perception of brands with at least one circular service offering, which is obviously selling bulk. So there is an opportunity for retailers to look at their bulk strategy and to expand and test and evaluate. Now, I have to say, there's still a major challenge. The biggest barrier to refills and bulk in stores is hygiene and food safety. But with the advent of technology and having smart people put their minds and making that a focus, I truly believe that is a huge opportunity for retailers in the food industry and a competitive advantage if you can get it solved. We also asked, how likely are you to switch your shopping to a retailer that offers the following? So this brand switching, this demonstrates that home delivery takes your old packaging away is really important. When you look at the colors, extremely likely and somewhat likely. The idea of only sells local produce is a way of talking to sustainability. The other one that's ranked with a high new environmentally friendly packaging section, right? Or has recycling center within the store. Look at those scores, 34 and 36%. And here's the irony. When I go to my Loblaws, it's just around the corner from my house, and I look at, at the back and near the produce, I can see them, in the skids and consolidating all the cardboard that is on the store. All that cardboard goes to recycling. I believe that there's a real opportunity for retailers to tell their recycling story, the stuff that they're really not promoting. Why wouldn't you have in the store a chart that identifies how much your products are being recycled and how it's being recycled right at the beginning? Because it's important, yes, for 8% of the consumers, but it's also important for social responsibility and making a social commitment to your communities. But let's move on. The opportunity is obviously a sustainable ecosystem. We talked about it's not a silver bullet. But let's start by understanding who are we targeting for sustainable packaging. In our study, we looked at a whole series of personas, customer segments, and we narrowed down to two. The green aspire, they're environmentally sensitive, loyal to brands who are engaged in environmental discourse, highly motivated by recycling products, and committed to social cause. Too much packaging is the challenge for them. And this group, if I have to go back and look at the study, represented 25% of consumers. So they're a large segment. But a larger segment are the enviro savers. These consumers are motivated not for social cause and responsibility. These consumers are motivated because social and sustainability reduces the cost, provides them cost savings, and yes, good for the planet. And so we have these two segments of consumers that telling the sustainable story is relevant to them. And the ability of moving their behaviors, you're already talking to the converted. And the opportunity is to convert these into a larger percentage of purchase of sustainable packaging and products. So now I just wanted to pause and say, we did this exploration of the supermarket of the future. It was a 1-year internal assignment during COVID. Most of our retail clients went dormant. We said, how do we keep our creative force strong, not having to lay anybody off? And so we said, what does the supermarket of the future look like? And so we did the strategic foresight exercise, look at the trends, not just 5 years out, but 10 years out. We developed 3 scenarios, and then we narrowed down the one that I'm going to share a glimpse of those elements. You can take a deeper look at it on our website. We called it Get Unboxed. Get Unboxed is really about moving away from packaging, reduction of packaging, but it goes further than that. It looks at the fact that retailers are going to solve the last mile of delivery. Walmart has tested in Arizona and Texas use of drones for home delivery. I think they're up to 10 stores testing that. That's just, all you have to do is read the news. Drones are now prevalent in every part of our lives. If it isn't warfare, it's home delivery of medication in remote areas. And so, what is that supermarket of the future look like? It looks like half the store is going to be back of house, half the store is going to be front of house, because the back of the house will be a distribution center for the products to be delivered to consumers' homes, or a pickup for cars. You're going to have a lot more electric charging stations in the parking lot, and you're going to use a roof to generate that electricity and probably provide net positive energy to the grid as part of that. So you can give you a sense here of a sustainable roof providing energy for the store and for the cars. You have at the back easy access to pick up your orders. We have a place for e-bikes, which is a growing segment. We're actually doing a dealership in China right now with e-bikes, which is the hottest thing. And then we have a drone station at the top where those packages are delivered to consumers' home via drone delivery. We don't have to worry because these are proximity-based retailers. So those drones have a probably delivery distance of a mile or less. The inside, we really focus on a shift towards experience. We're looking at a lot of whole meal replacement products. One way of reducing food waste is to portion pack products for the consumers and have them order those portion pack products. And here you see the environment where we have these prepackaged products. We have a central area where we demonstrate the food offerings that are found in these boxes. And the customer can actually customize their packages if they want, or if they're in a rush, they can just grab a box or a couple of boxes and take it home to feed their children. Digital signing will play an important role of that experience. Obviously, in-season products will include prepackaged. Retailers are already doing that with a variety of categories in the produce section. We'll see more and more of that happening, but also promoting local farmers, local growers. The growth of organic will continue as that becomes more and more mainstream. This is our bulk fill-up section where we use technology to portion, dispense, ensure safety from a hygiene standpoint, but a significantly larger area provided for consumers and making that a destination location for consumers. And then obviously plant-based products, we see that as being an opportunity. And obviously sustainable fish products is another area of opportunity. So I just want to wrap it up now because I can go on for hours talking about sustainability, but I'd like to open up to questions. So in summary, sustainable packaging change happens in small steps. We don't see this. We call it the trust ladder. Big transformation happens in small steps. It never happens in large steps. All you have to do is look at some of the retailers have attempted that, in JCPenney being a great example. Eliminating excess packaging is the biggest concern among consumers, shifting from plastic to glass and paper substrates. Bring sustainability claims and packaging to the front panel with new simplified iconography. If the packaged good industry is not doing it, maybe the retailer needs to identify that this category, 90% of the product is being recycled. Drive promotions for reusable shopping bags. So, we still have a hurdle. If you look at the percentage of consumers who come to the store without shopping bags, to promote, give them incentives. Retailers have apps with loyalty programs. There's an opportunity to link that to shifting their behaviors. Increase the availability of bulk items. So look at your bulk today. How can you expand it? Yes, there is somewhat wastage, but there's opportunities here. Consumers are willing to participate in circular services. So how do you promote those in your store? Explore. Then you look at these two target groups. How can you help them accelerate? How do you know who they are? How can you classify them within your target group and demographics? Start looking for these consumers, these consumer profiles, and send them separate messages that talk to their needs and create loyalty with them. And then sustainability doesn't end with packaging. It happens at home. It's not just in the store, the ecosystem. They move towards things that allow for the product to stay last longer. And I'll just pause it here and stop sharing, and then look forward to conversation.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jean-Pierre. And what we'd like to do, well, first of all, thank you for walking us through that. That was very, very interesting. Lots of insight. I'd like to pivot to the Slido survey for a moment to collect some people's thoughts, and then we'll open it up for broader discussion. So let me share my screen with the first Slido question, asking you to, here we are, yes. Asking you to identify what you have currently as your priority sustainable packaging strategy today. Looking to rank if it's design for recyclability, if it's PCR content, if it's lightweighting, if it's elimination outright, if it's substitution away from plastic to alternative materials. So please take a moment to identify what you would identify as your priority strategy today. Here we go. So we have a good representation design for recyclability, not surprising, followed by substitution, and lightweighting, PCR, and very little on elimination and reuse at this moment.
And out of the way over 30 people on this, no jumping on the bandwagon now that you see design for recyclability.
Yeah. So again, I anecdotally, not a surprise to see design for recyclability near the top of the list, given all the discussions we've been having. But again, just for context, thank you. That was helpful. We're going to pivot to the second question, which is how do Jean-Pierre's insights today influence your views on your priority sustainable packaging strategy? Does it reinforce it? Does it introduce new considerations but not likely to change your approach? Might it lead you to re-examine your current strategy, or does it raise significant questions about your current strategy? A few more moments. Great. Well, thank you for that input. Again, nice to know that, Jean-Pierre, you've succeeded in introducing some new ideas to get people to look at their priorities. May not change them, but definitely help inform them, if not reinforce them. So again, thank you for that feedback, everyone. Maybe with that, I will open it up to the group for Q&A. Please by a show of hands if you have a question or a point to raise. Okay, Ron, how about you start, and then we'll go to Julie.
All right, because I know if I don't get in before Julie, you never know how many more questions Julie likes delivering on. I'm just kidding, Julie. So we hear the question on the consumer, Jean-Pierre. How fickle is the consumer in the end, though? Because I know some of the research that we've done, when they talk to sustainability studies, they like to say the right thing, but their action on the other side is very different than how they respond to surveys. How have you balanced out some of that in your data?
Well, we, research is, to your point, it's directionally at best. It's not definitive. But what I think is important to note is that 40% said that they pay attention to recycling claims, but it doesn't change their behavior. And if you think P&G, when they launched their condensed or their pods the first time, it failed because it wasn't convenient for consumers to use the product. And then they solved the convenience factor, and now it's the de facto norm in everything we do, right? And so when I think about sustainability and recycling packaging until we solve the convenience factor of adherence to recycling. Until we solve that, and I don't think we're going to get the consumer to come on board. Yeah, all the media in the world and about the plastic in the oceans, yes, they feel bad. They, when they go to the store, maybe they reduce slightly their behavior on buying plastic, but if it's going to be inconvenient for them, they're not going to do it. And so I think retailers, there's an opportunity to look at convenience as the filter. Sometimes you look at, well, we got to reduce this, we got to reduce that. Look at it from a convenience perspective, because if you solve the convenience perspective, you're going to solve the recycling and environmental sustainability perspective.
Great, thank you, Jean-Pierre. Julie, over to you.
Thanks. I'll go easy, Ron. Don't worry. Julie Dixon, Pattison Food Group. So we're in the West. I used to be a bulk foods manager in 1991, just for the record. I started when I was 10. My question is, when your study, I remember the sample size was about 1,000, but I was curious about the geography of the consumers and how many of those surveyed were in jurisdictions where there is already a robust curbside recycling program. Because it struck me like it might be driving that insight a little bit one way or the other.
Great question. We didn't track that. We could have asked the question, but we didn't think of it at the time. But great.
So where do you generally know the geography then?
Yeah, we know the splits, and obviously Ontario, and it was English only study. It was not French. So it was Ontario West, if you like, and the Maritimes. And if you look at it was an open question, so we didn't put quotas on population. So it typically would represent the population profile of Canada, urban versus suburban, and Canada's an urban country versus the US. And so you'd have a higher propensity of, people living in Toronto, Hamilton, Vancouver, things like that, which have a more developed blue box program for sure.
Yeah, which is probably driving some of the ease and ability to recycle perceptions, right? Because they can't put metal in their blue bin. So and one day I'll answer your question about what I think about plastic bags in the produce department, but maybe not today. You're welcome, Ron and Dan.
Thanks, Julie. So with that, over to Karen. Karen, you had a question.
Sure. Hey, JP. It's
hey, Karen.
A long time. How are you?
Great. Great to see you.
Good to see you. I've worked with JP in past CPG lives, so it's great to have him back. So in my life, so I guess my comments are sort of mixed with questions. So if you don't mind my dialogue for a minute, I'd appreciate that. In the study, when we talked about 67% of consumers would be willing to switch grocery stores if they knew they had more sustainable packaging. I'm just wondering, based on your experience, how much of that is intertwined with price, right? So we know consumers have, convenience needs, but they also have pricing needs. And, I think, yes, I'm sure if prices were the same and it was a level playing field, and one banner offered, completely sustainable packaging, that would be a draw. But, at what point does this become priced out of the realm of what people would consider attractive? And then the second part of that is, I just really wonder sometimes if consumers really understand what sustainability is, right? Like, I think we all know, it's kind of like antioxidants. We all know it's good, but we don't necessarily know what it means. So, you had mentioned earlier about biodegradable packaging and why more retailers don't switch to that. Well, when a consumer gets something in the mail from their government about managing waste, and I've got something right here that says items marked or labeled biodegradable go in the garbage. It's like, what's the point? Like, what are we really doing? We don't have a place to put it. So I'm just not sure where consumers are. I took your point about the retailer needs to lead. I love that because I can see, you know, as a competitive advantage going forward with something like your study to a major retailer and saying, hey, let's lead this. Let's do this together. We're a produce supplier. We can make an impact. We can get food first mover advantage and the store of the future, or the behavior, consumer behavior of the future, as long as there's no cost implication, because I really think that's where consumers draw the line, is that, yes, of course I want all of this, but I don't want to pay any more for it. I mean, especially in today's environment where, you know, we're already facing sky high pricing like we've never seen before, and it's an issue. So just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, Karen. Okay, so the first question, you know, we asked them a question in the sense of parity. In other words, we didn't get into would you be willing to pay more for stamp? Because we know the answer. The answer is no. Right. The answer is no. And so if you're not competitive in the marketplace, and that's one of the hurdles for retailers to move towards a sustainable model, is that it comes with a cost. I mean, accelerated biodegradable agents add a 10% cost to the cost of plastic. They biodegrade within a year, and which is great, but no one's going to be willing to add 10% to the cost of their packaging, their produce. Or if you're a CPG brand, as you know, Karen, that would be a big issue, trying to get a price increase from a retailer because of that. So it's a challenge. That's number one. Number two is, you know, I said it's not a silver bullet. The reality is the government's as confused as we are, and the retailers. You know, that notice you said about biodegradable is true. I mean, they don't know what to do with biodegradable plastic. And so the easy way of doing it is to say it's all plastic is plastic. And so we're just going to deal with it that way. And so until the entire ecosystem builds a model that is geared towards sustainable, it's never going to work, because it's an intertwined value chain model, and every player in that value chain need to be on board. And we know for a fact very few of those value chain players are on board for all the different reasons. You know, confusion, cost of goods, cost of distribution, logistics, you know, access to product, all those things come to play.
The supply of materials, like.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you for your question, Karen. I'm going to, again, any other questions for Jean-Pierre? I have one, but I'm going to hold on mine. Give it to the audience. If not, then let me ask my Jean-Pierre. You mentioned on one slide the appeal to consumers if the stores had recycling within store or environmentally friendly packaging sections within store. But then you also mentioned that until we solve, quote, the convenience factor, behavior will largely not change. And what are your thoughts in terms of, when you think of the word convenience, it being solve the problem, but the consumer doesn't need to change behavior at all, versus part of the solution is educating the consumer so that the behavior reflects more the outcome they're seeking. Because when you mention the in-store, like especially the environmentally friendly packaging section, I see that as much an educational opportunity as one to, you know, just showcase what is possible in terms of truly sustainable solutions. So what are your thoughts in terms of, again, is the convenience more about operating under the assumption that the consumer's behavior will not change, so just fix the problem around it, or it needs to be an integral part of that effort, if you get my question?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer it slightly differently. I would say the consumer will never lead a move to sustainability. I don't believe the consumer will lead the transformation. It's going to have to be either the government mandating no plastic, period, end of it, done. Everyone plays the same rules. I don't care. It's convenient or not convenient. I don't care. No plastic. It'll be that, or it'll be the retailers who have kind of solved that, you know, the ecosystem model that start to gain market share and get attention. Because once one player gains market share because they're doing it right, we know what's going to happen. Everyone's going to play the game. But it won't be, number one, it won't be driven by the consumer. I hate to say this, but it will not be driven by us in our individual lives making purchase decisions, because our purchase decision, to Karen's point, will be driven by money, convenience, and safety probably is another big issue. So that's number one. I think the idea of recycling and having information for consumers, I don't think they're looking for the information. You know, they listen. I don't know what you're talking about recycling. I put my stuff in the blue box. Like, what more is there to talk about? And so I don't think it's about information. I think part of it is behavioral economics. I think the retailers need to, and a lot of them are embracing and researching behavioral economics, how to use behavior levers to change the behavior of the consumers in a positive way through their app, through rewards programs, through recognition. But the last, I don't think it's about educating the consumer. It's about making a statement, though, that the retail is committed to sustainability by tracking and having a scorecard in each store of the level of recycling that their products are. And I think that will seed, you know, the kind of mindset interest in sustainability. But it's also good for the retailer because it shows that they're committed to the community.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Jean-Pierre. Ron, and then Julie.
You know what? I'll let Julie go first, and then I'll wrap it up.
Okay. Thanks, Ron.
Julie,
Julie.
get back up. I'm just getting back up on my soapbox for a second. So, so we do lots of what you said. We've been doing lots of what you said for a long, long time. So I would suggest that most of my colleagues in retail are also in that same camp. We have 300 or so stores in 300 or so different communities in 6, 7 different jurisdictions across Canada. And I would suggest we have 300 or so different sets of rules around what could be recycled, what could be, and I know everybody's heard this before, but what I would say is that it would be great to be able to do something once everywhere well, but it is not the retailer who can make a change in how things are regulated or managed in our country, nor can we influence entirely the capabilities of the system that is set up to handle those materials properly, so that we could actually go to our CPG company partners and say, hey, why doesn't everybody just put in their UPC code these days, a little bit of information the consumer could understand about what to do with that package at its end of life. And the reason they can't is because it's not the same answer in Surrey as it is in Langley, as it is in Calgary, as it is in Edmonton, as it is in pick a town in anywhere land. And until that time, if I was to use a compostable bag for my produce in my green bin in Surrey, my green bin would sit at my curb every week for the rest of my life, because the recyclers will not pick it up and take it to the facility with which it will be properly managed. So until then, how is it incumbent on the retailer to be the one to try and drive this change all by ourselves?
Julie, that's the point I was trying to make, is that it's an ecosystem, and it won't be driven by the consumer. It'll be driven by a mandated, and so to answer your question, we have a lot of smart people on this call. Why don't you collectively, you've got an association here. It's about you, as I've seen with the Retail Council, Denise Brisebois, going and fighting that battle and raising the issue. And to be candid with you, Julie, if you do, the consumers are going to give you credit for it. That it's been driven by the retailers versus you being perceived. This is an assumption, but perceived as the people slowing it down, right? And so, so I think there's an opportunity for you to lobby the government to have a standard protocol for recycling across Canada. But it's a big challenge. I mean, we can't even buy wine, across province borders, right? I mean, we're really, Canada's not a country, it's a bunch of provinces, loosely tied together by the federal government through our taxation. It's not, every province, every community has different rules, but I think the government somebody needs to mandate that, and it can't be you, it's gonna have to be the government. And it's gotta be at the federal level, not at the provincial level. So I agree with you 100%.
But at the federal level, they have absolutely no idea what goes on at the provincial level, and they have almost no idea what's going on at the municipal level or the regional district level, and everybody has their own way of doing things, everybody. And what that
Yeah.
means is if you want to try and improve or innovate in the system, you actually have to lobby 80 places now in British Columbia only. Like you have to actually unwind something 80 times, not once, not twice, not even 13.
That's
So,
why I think you need to go to the federal level. You need to educate the federal level on what the issues are.
oh, they would like
Examples
us,
of the-
they would like us to give away reusable bags to try and mitigate the use of single-use plastic, only we can't because the municipalities won't allow it. It's against law. So we told them
Yeah.
they should go talk to them about that, and we'd be happy to.
Yeah, I think
maybe I'll jump in, Jean-Pierre, and just frame,
Yeah.
because I know this is one of those conversations that is the crux of
Yep.
everyone's concern, and it's a systems discussion. That's what I was going to bring up. I think Julie hit it right on the head. I think your presentation frames that when you look at it around. You're right. Is it regulatory model? So what are the levers we need? And I think as an association and as a group of companies that are on this call and others in our network, how are we leveraging that? So I think you hit it right on the head. You know, how do we leverage and drive the messaging forward? But it's not going to be an easy battle. And we look at this through the Canada Plastic Pack and other organizations where the fragmentation of our system is our biggest challenge moving forward. And I'll frame it out in the most simplistic way, because we'll spend a lot of time on this call diving too deep into it. And I know we have some other pieces we need to get into. And it's a simple thing. We're going to talk a little bit about, you're going to hear on the PLU, right? And moving to a compostable PLU sticker. Well, it sounds simple, but you're going to hear later on in the call, not so simple when their standards aren't efficiently established in your on a national framework, right? And then on top of that, economies of scale aren't in play because the rest of the world hasn't gone that direction. So to make that commitment, it's going to cost fractions of pennies, which equate to hundreds of thousands of dollars or more for a company on implementation. So not that I'm making excuses, but you understand, I know, as everyone does, how that all connects. So I know we have two more questions really fast, because I know, Dan, we're going to run out of time, I think, with that. And I think Jen and then Jane order I thought I saw come up.
Yeah, so Jen, over to you.
Yep. So Jen Doxey, I actually work at GeroPack. So we basically do all the packaging materials for fresh produce. So I think one of the things, just to talk about Julie's comment about the retail level, at least I can say from the US side of it, the challenge that we're seeing is that all the different retailers are asking for something different from some of our customers. And so there's not that alignment where one retailer says, I want this biodegradable film, or I want this compostable film. And then another large retailer says, absolutely not. Do not send that to me. I want plastic is the way that we think is the best package. And I think for us that it makes it really hard for us to be able, as a supplier, to know which direction to go, because each different retailer has a different stance on the right direction for sustainability in packaging. And I don't even know, how do we address that as a group?
Well, that's again, it comes back to a systemization of the issue, and until the systemization of the issue gets resolved, it's a problem. In the U.S., it's even more compounded because the number of banners and very regionalized chains who are dominant in their market, it just adds a whole new level of complexity that Canada doesn't have. And so it's a bigger issue. But again, it's back to systemization and really establishing a North American standard or US standard that will help overcome that. And even when they establish the US standard, if they did, as as the gun laws, there's always going to be states that are going to fight it, right?
Yeah. Maybe, JP, maybe I'll just quickly answer Jen too. This already exists, but it has to be accepted and adopted. So the Golden Design Rules created by the Consumer Good Forum, they have been adopted in Canada by the Canada Plastic Pack. CPMA has fine-tuned them for produce, and we'll talk a bit about that later in this call. But the US Plastic Pack, is only now starting to consider those Golden Design Rules for US. So the biggest hurdle we have on a North American framework is the commonality of our standards and the acceptance of those standards in delivery. Right now in Canada, I know the retailers on this call have all agreed to those Golden Design Rules. And overall, everyone is moving forward with the premise around the tenets of those rules to help suppliers meet the expectations of the Canadian market. On a North American level, it would be ideal because we know in produce there's no border, right? Well, CFIA will tell you differently, but if you know what I mean, the product does flow pretty freely. So our job here is to push. How do we introduce and ensure the golden design rules and that the produce specific rules are adopted and implemented? And then how do we ensure the regulatory framework is there that meets national expectations and harmonized provincial equivalency, and in the US state? Because hate to say it, California and the direction they're going versus where, and Tamara will tell you, right? It's a mixed bag out of everywhere in the US. So,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks, Ron. Jane, you're last up, so we'll give you the last question. And Tamara's got her hand too. Okay.
Not a question,
let's
just to underscore what Ron just said, and just in case anybody thinks we're not, part of our advocacy messaging at the federal level is always about how do we address that issue of municipal and provincial fragmentation in terms of recycling. We understand that, and it has been at the core of a lot of our advocacy. So I just want people not to think we weren't aware and trying to represent your messaging very clearly.
Thanks, Jane. Okay, Tamara, you've got the last the last swing at this. Go ahead.
Really quickly,